After more than 20 years since its initial release, Heathers remains a cult classic because of its adherence to Joseph Campbell's monomythic structure. In Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces, Campbell describes the hero's journey, which is comprised of 17 stages. The hero's journey and its 17 stages influences contemporary works, like Heathers. The 2014 Heathers musical uses storytelling in a different way than the 1989 film. After all, the audience has changed. They are now young adults who are very familiar with a 1989 film. Except now, they're sitting in an auditorium instead of behind a screen. While the Heathers story changed formats from film to musical, the monomyth elements are still intact. Per Corey Hansen, in his article, states that the genre's demand for multimodal expression and complexity brings together the diverse elements from both pop culture and fine art. Not only does Heathers bring those elements together, it also brings the monomyth into the musical. The musical starts with the song Beautiful, which depicts Veronica's call to adventure. Veronica starts off in a mundane situation of normality from which some information is received that acts as the call as a head off to the unknown.
Wasn't feeling well. We're helping her.
Not without a hall pass, you're not. Week's detention.
Actually, Miss Fleming, all four of us are out on a hall pass. Yearbook committee.
I see you're all listed. Hurry up and get where you're going.
This is an excellent forgery. Who are you?
Veronica Sawyer. I crave a boon.
What boon?
Let me sit at your table at lunch just once, no talking necessary. If people think that you guys tolerate me, then they'll leave me alone.
In the accompaniment in the background, you hear the staccatos of repeating notes and even accented notes, or suddenly loud notes, including in the vocal, soprano, alto, tenor, bass lines thrown in between Veronica's lines. Words like freak, loser, poser, etc. are all typical words you would hear teenagers throw around in schools, and these accented in the music emphasize the mundaneness of Veronica's situation as a high school student. Looking at the score for the musical, the notes in Veronica's parts also contribute to the mundane feeling of her situation because the notes seem to be in a loop. For example, the part where Veronica says,
"We were so tiny, happy and shiny,"
when reminiscing about her youth, have the same notes and phrasing, so they don't really stick out to the audience as being memorable parts and just a big blur of bliss, in this case of childhood. Each phrase also ends on a note G below the starting note C, emphasizing the nothing special typical life of being a child. This happy memory soon turns to a fearful stage of Veronica's life when everyone grows up. In the score, the sound of fear is provided by a repeating note motif, B and C, of
"Then we got bigger, that was the trigger, like the Huns invading Rome,"
ending on a higher note, E. This style of phrasing exhibits to the audience that something is changing in the storyline and becoming more dramatic, which also demonstrates Veronica's point that it's scary to grow up and move on from the comfort of childhood bliss into a world of ugly drama. You can hear Veronica's sad yet hopeful situation in the music where there's a choir behind Veronica harmonizing with her lines with little instrumental playing. This creates an almost angelic heavenly effect, making the idea of high school sound pure and good, almost pure experience not filled with bad, nasty people. The contrast between the two situations is clearly shown by the musical elements involved. Call to head off into the unknown from mundane situation in this stage of the hero's journey is heard in this number when the Heathers come in. The music slows down, sounding divine. Everyone says Heather, which is monophonic texture, and the definition of this means one sound shown by the same notes in the score for higher and lower voice. So the people in the school sound like they're praising Almighty God when they see the Heathers. It's very cult-like in this context, showing the power that the Heathers have over the general student body at Veronica's school.
Even the dancing is reminiscent of fanfare, which highlights the connotation of royalty, and therefore godliness.
This is further demonstrated near the end of the song, where the Heathers have acknowledged Veronica. The same monophonic texture is used, but this time the lyrics are Veronica.
Veronica?
Veronica, Veronica, Veronica.
Something else that contributes to the powerfulness even more are the dynamics when people belt Veronica. The dynamic is fortissimo, meaning super loud in English, and there are also a bunch of accented notes which makes the ending sound even louder and super powerful and dramatic for effect, indicating Veronica's bliss.
In this case, Veronica starts from a situation of normality, being an outsider, She overhears the Heathers talking about needing a note forged, which is her call to head off into the unknown. In her case, the unknown is being an insider, a part of the Heathers. As Campbell states, the adventure may begin as a mere blunder, or still again, one may be only casually strolling when some passing phenomena catches the wandering eye and lures one away from the frequented paths of man. However, the writers of Heathers the musical use the monomyth subversively because Veronica joins the Heathers both on her own violation and an accident.
Although Veronica may look like a Heather now, she is fully hesitant to fully initiate into the Heathers group. Veronica has had a childhood friend named Martha Dumbtruck, who is seen as an outsider. In the song Beautiful, Veronica sings about how she would like it if everybody in Westerburg High School was kinder to each other and actively defends Martha. Through the song, Veronica explicitly indicates that she has a strong sense of duty to uphold when it comes to kindness. Veronica is hesitant to bully Martha. When she tells Heather Chandler that she is not comfortable, Candy Store plays.
In the beginning, there are dissonant chords played after each sentence is spoken by Heather Chandler.
For Ram for like 12 years now, okay? This would kill
Are
me.
we gonna have a problem? Do you got a bone to pick? You've come so far, why now are you pulling on my dick? I'm going to slap your face off, and everyone here could watch. But I'm feeling nice. Here's some advice. Listen up, biatch!
Heather Chandler is trying to threaten Veronica after she refuses to heed the next step in her journey in becoming a real member of the Heathers clique, which is writing a fake love letter to Martha, supposedly from Ram, who Martha has a crush on. The dissonant chords emphasize the consequences Veronica will face in her life if she doesn't do what the Heathers tell her to do to be a part of their clique, since the chords aren't pleasing to hear and sound scary.
Referring to the score, you see that the tone is a lot darker in the verses as compared to the chorus. Set in D flat major, the verses have a darker tone to them, and there is a recurring littling phase, such as or that seem to imply the mocking tone of the Heathers towards Veronica for being a goody two-shoes and wanting to stay friends with Martha. The change to a brighter major key
Welcome to my candy store. Step into my candy store.
in the chorus demonstrates to the audience that the Heathers are presented as a wonderland, and the music here work together to prove the Heathers' dominance. This helps us understand the feelings of inadequacy, fear, and insecurity that Veronica has here. It also demonstrates that the connotation of sounds can bolster the impact of a story. Once the hero has committed to the quest, consciously or unconsciously, his or her guide and magical helper appears or becomes known. Immediately after Veronica obliges to the Heathers, she encounters JD, the broody and mysterious new kid. While JD isn't supernatural in a ghosts and goblins way, he is supernatural in the Westerburg High School universe, as he does not comply with the school's hierarchy and actively rebels against it. She becomes impressed with him, as exhibited through the song Fight For Me. The song starts off with a monophonic holy shit, which not only reflects the shock value of JD, but also reflects how impressed with JD Veronica is. There's a drastic change in background music here. From the action music from Candy Store, we change gears to sad music. Most of the sadness is because of the lyrics and the minor chords used here.
Holy shit! 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 Holy shit!
This fight doesn't look so horrible, yet feels so right. I should watch this crap. That's not who I am. But with this kid. Mr. No-Name Kid, so who might you be? And could you fight for me?
Also, the song Fight For Me is similar to a 90s pop ballad, which is an appropriate genre for the time. This number being a pop ballad exhibits to the audience that Veronica has found her guide in the hero's journey, as she sings about wanting him to fight for her/aid her. Throughout the film and the musical, he provides resources and encouragement for her, as she navigates her new life of having contact with the Heathers, and we can see why it's him. She's clearly fallen for him at first sight, tying the two of them together in the eyes of the audience. Also, the monophonic holy shit repeating chorus at the beginning and end of the song makes it super clear to the audience that the introduction to JD in the plot is really important, since holy shit is an exclamatory phrase, and in the score, the dynamic is fortissimo at these parts, with accented notes for extra emphasis.
According to Hansen in his article, most often taking the form of time loops breaks up the narrative structure by putting the story's progression on standby for a moment, establishing a non-temporal room where an emotion, a situation, or the like is unfolded not as progression, but as a state of mind, a condition. We can see Veronica's state of mind unfolding, but while the story is kinesthetically on standby, slow-mo, linguistically, the story is not. The slow-mo of the scene breaks this guideline and reminds the audience that this plot was originally cinematic, which is effective as the general audience of this musical are fans of the 1989 film. As composers, we need to remember that sometimes to tell an effective story, rules should be broken. This is the point where the person actually crosses into the field of adventure, leaving the known limits of his or her world and venturing into an unknown and dangerous realm where the rules and limits are not known. At the house party, Veronica adventures into a realm that is completely unknown to her.
At the party, Big Fun plays. This song is self-explanatory. It's upbeat and all the characters are singing Big Fun super loudly. In this song, Veronica clearly shows that it's her first time rebelling, as the line she sings,
Dreams are coming true when you can laugh, but not at you. I'm not alone, I'm not afraid. I feel like Bono and Live
has barely any rest in the measures that contain this phrase. The notes also start low, the D flat above middle C, then climb up to the C, the octave above middle C, which makes what Veronica is saying an exclamation of excitement. She says this after getting drunk and smoking weed.
Since it's her first time doing all of this, and during the time period of the 80s, drugs were a huge deal compared to now. It's supposed to be a huge shock to the audience as well as demonstrate to them that it's a dangerous realm that Veronica's entering, with unknown limits and rules, since she has always been a rule follower. At the party, Veronica crosses into the field of adventure by standing up for herself against Heather. World of Heathers and ventures into the world of JD, where the rules and limits are unknown. She also gets with JD, further symbolizing her rebellion from Heathers, plunging herself into the adventure.
So the world's unfair, even love's out there, and here it's beautiful. Let's make this beautiful.
That works for me.
The belly of the whale represents the final separation from the hero's known world and self. By entering the stage, the person shows their willingness to undergo metamorphosis. By killing Heather Chandler, Veronica separates herself from the world that she knows, the Heather's world. Though Veronica begs for Heather's apology, Veronica is finally separated from her known world and self. By killing Heather Chandler and forging her suicide note, Veronica shows her willingness to undergo metamorphosis.
After Heather Chandler, the queen bee dies, the song Me Inside Me also dies. The dynamic here adds to the wickedness of the situation, which is mezzo piano, meaning medium soft.
They couldn't see past my rock star mystique. They wouldn't dare look in my eyes. But just underneath was a terrified girl who clings to her pillow and cries.
To demonstrate phrasing that ends with notes going downward, meaning they start from middle C, then by the end of the phrase, the last note is B flat.
It's also important in that it brings the gloomy, sinister feeling to the context as well. These verses are the most important thing to focus in the song for the hero's journey context, because it shows how Veronica is heading over to the dark side by doing something wrong.
Scene 2, Road of Trials. The Road of Trials is a series of tests, tasks, or ordeals that the person must undergo to begin the transformation. Often the person fails one or more of these tests, which often occur in threes. In order to begin the transformation into JD's world, Veronica must kill the following people. The first task in transforming the high school into a less hellish landscape, Veronica must kill Heather Chandler, the queen bee. The second task is killing Kurt and Ram Sweeney, which Veronica and JD complete successfully by staging their deaths, like Heather's, as a suicide. However, Veronica experienced a large sense of remorse after murdering the two. And also feels upset at the fact that JD lied to her, telling her that the bullets were tranquilizers. Due to Veronica's attitudes about the task and about JD, she does not complete the final task, which is killing Heather Duke, the person that replaced Heather Chandler in the hierarchy.
No, I do not accept this. We've already killed 3 people. This ends right here, right now.
This is the point when the person experiences a love that has the power and significance of the all-powerful, all-encompassing, unconditional love that a fortunate infant may experience with his or her mother. The love that JD and Veronica experience throughout the musical is very powerful and significant. It is quite literally like God. JD is protective and caring of Veronica, similar to how Veronica's mother is protective and caring. Veronica and JD's love is powerful and significant, all-powerful, all-encompassing, unconditional, like how pious people worship their God. This song is probably the beginning of all the messed up transformation that Veronica and the whole plot begins to go through. The music has a very romantic feel to it, but the protagonist is murdering 2 high school bullies.
The song is in A major, and it sounds almost heavenly like a duet between 2 lovers. The soft piano accompaniment in the background of the pop ballad serves to establish this unconditional love between the 2 lovers. JD's lines and the way he delivers them with the soft piano accompaniment playing in the background serve to show the audience that he cares for Veronica with a love so powerful it's unconditional. The reprise at the end of the song also demonstrates the scary unconditional love the 2 have for each other and just how powerful it is. Because the dissonance in the modified chords remind you of a horror story, something isn't right, even though the song itself is sweet overall.
The idea of God being a driving force is similar to how Heather Chandler was a god. This connection emphasizes to the audience that JD is no different from Heather, as they are both manipulative, although they already know that JD is the bad guy. As composers, we can use plot connections and monomyth motifs in order to emphasize the plot, which is extremely effective, even if the audience is familiar with the story, like in this case.
It could be argued that Veronica's temptation is in the blues song. Rumors emerged of Ram and Kurt and Veronica having a threesome. Although the social hierarchy no longer includes Heather, the landscape is now uncontrollable. In the reprise of Our Love is God, Veronica sings about how she is saddened by the deaths of Kurt and Ram and how she is tempted to stop the quest. Veronica talks with JD about wanting to stop murdering people to create a greater good in the world. This is the first time she really confronts him about not wanting to follow his plans.
Special, we have a lot of work to do.
Work.
Making the world a decent place for people who are decent.
When does it end?
When every asshole is dead!
Fine, we're damaged. Really damaged, but that does not make us wise. We're not special. We're not different. We don't choose who lives or dies. Let's be normal. See bad movies.
The song is yet another sweet love song in A major, but with a tone of sadness and hopefulness. The notes held at the end of the phrases in the chorus, where Veronica pleads to JD to choose her instead of carrying out justice by killing people, work to leave the message in the audience's head, as well as JD's head, that Veronica is confronting JD, who holds the ultimate power in her life, about the wrong they have done and how she wants to change. For example, the first time the chorus is heard, Veronica sings,
Don't you want a life with me?
and then holds this note, and then holds this note again, and again. Also, in a smaller sense, Kurt and Ram atone with their fathers in the song I Love My Dead Gay Son. The school atones itself as well. Both of these songs have a church gospel element, which reiterates the atonement and also highlights the impact of JD and Veronica's homicidal sprees. After all, their love is God.
When someone dies a physical death or dies to the self to live in spirit, he or she moves beyond the pairs of opposite to a state of divine knowledge, love, compassion and bliss. Veronica finds out that the school isn't doing anything to really stop the suicides or the fact that students are dying, and becomes furious with empathy for people like Heather McNamara, who's currently suicidal in this case. Her JD self dies in the scene. Kurt and Ram have died for gay acceptance. Martha Dump Truck attempts suicide and dies to live this way. In this, Veronica moves to a state of divine knowledge, of love and compassion.
Scene 7. The ultimate boom. The ultimate boom is the achievement of the goal of the quest. It is what the person went on the journey to get or do. All the previous steps serve to prepare and purify the person for this step. After a news station interviews the school and the school has a suicide assembly, Veronica saves one person from dying, Heather McNamara. from overdosing on pills in the school bathroom. This helps Veronica achieve her goal of making the world a better place by saving a life from suicide. She and Heather M. get along better. The ultimate boom in this case is not very apparent. The composers use the stage of the monomyth in a subversive way. Veronica's a human, and like most humans, her boons change. The slightly subversive use of this stage indicates growth in Veronica and makes the plot slightly more realistic.
Having found bliss and enlightenment in the other world, the hero may not want to return to the ordinary world to bestow the boom onto his fellow men. Martha's suicide attempt is symbolic of the refusal of return. She finds bliss and enlightenment in her kindergarten fantasy and does not want to return to the ordinary world to bestow the boom, the kindness of kindergarten, on her fellow classmates. Veronica finds bliss and enlightenment in getting along with Heather McNamara. Veronica also doesn't want to return to the hateful world that JD has showed her and breaks up with him because she no longer wants to have anything to do with his immoral activities.
Right and wrong.
Sometimes the hero must escape with the boon. This can be just as dangerous and adventurous returning from the journey as it was to go on it.
Open the door, please. Open the door. Can we not fight anymore, please? Can we not fight anymore? I let his anger fester and infect me. His solution is a lie. No one here deserves to die except for me and the monster I created.
So that he would think she's dead and leave her alone. Then, she confronts him in the boiler room underneath the school gym, where he's setting up a bomb to kill everyone at school. JD ends up sacrificing himself to be killed by his own bomb, leaving everybody else unharmed, including Veronica. Veronica embarks on a mini-quest of straying from JD, and JD's quest are both boons.
It's better because you beat me fair and square. Please stand back now. A little further. Don't know what this thing will do. Hope you miss me. Wish you kissed me. And you know I worship you. I'll trade my life for yours. Oh my God. And once I disappear, I'll come back down here.
Oftentimes, the hero needs a powerful guide to bring them back to everyday life, especially if the person has been wounded or weakened by the experience. Heather McNamara loves Veronica, ensuring her that Veronica was missed, since everybody thought that Veronica committed suicide. JD is a powerful guide that brings Veronica back to everyday life. Through his death, JD is literally wounded by the experience. In a literal sense, Veronica rescues the school without JD, as he is dead.
Obtaining the wisdom gained on the quest, integrating that wisdom into a human life, and possibly sharing the wisdom with the rest of the world.
I'd be honored if you would let me.
Achieving a balance between the material and spiritual, which is the outer and the inner world. There is nothing more to want than just to live in peace with each other in the student body.
Mastery leads to freedom from the fear of death, which in turn is the freedom to live. This is sometimes referred to as living in the moment, neither anticipating the future nor regretting the past. The student body is in a state of equilibrium, and they are free from the fear of death. Everybody's free to live how they would like to. Heather McNamara, Martha, and Veronica all become friends and just enjoy their time as being 17. Everyone in school is friendly with each other, and there's no more drama. The pleading that was evident in this song between JD and Veronica has now turned into more of a celebratory song in this reprise, as if the characters are sure they'll be focusing on just them being teenagers instead of all the dark drama that had been going on. This is evident in the way the song is sped up here, and once again, the dynamic of fortissimo and accented notes are present in the score. This song also incorporates elements of the song Beautiful, which brings the audience back to Veronica's goals. This time, however, there's less dark chanting and more light, happy chanting, indicative of unity.
Musical scenes that demonstrate pathos to move the audience into believing the action of characters is used to evoke emotion from the audience in choosing who to believe, Veronica versus JD, or to feel pity/empathy for certain characters and their fates. Logic is also used in the scenes that subsequently follow each other are in results of actions done in the scene before another. Kairos is also used. In the 80s, when the film wasn't released, teenage suicide was a pressing topic, so the timing of Heathers, albeit a black comedy, was effective. At the time of the musical, anti-bullying was also a hot topic, so the timing of the musical made the message more effective. Also, the vocabulary of the teenagers fit the identity politics of the time, which was the 80s, so we have raunchy jokes, homophobic slurs, etc. In 2018, they are adapting the Heathers movie into a TV show with a more diverse Heathers, which fits into the identity politics of 2018, which calls for queer and people of color representation. However, the way that they are handling it is ineffective, as it paints queer and people of color as villains. This musical uses many modes that bolster the impact of the story. So with kinesthetics, dancing, oral singing, talking, linguistic, stage, props, visual, the placement of characters on stage to demonstrate relationships and relationship dynamics, spatial. I think the multimodality really helps stick the moral of the monomythic story with the audience. All the modes used in the musical really engage the audience with the whole monomyth, as if they themselves were right there with the protagonist living through all the drama on stage. In other words, the audience feels like they were with the protagonist during the times of his or her struggles and triumphs. Monomyths usually tell the story in super long epics, like the Odyssey, and consists of only a couple modes. Like in the Odyssey, the modes that were present were mostly linguistic, written as text, and sometimes pictures are thrown in depending on the publisher, which is visual. In the case of Heathers, the musical, we get way more modes, which helps engage the audience better with the monomyth. I believe that this is a more modern form of the monomyth, helps attract a wider audience of different backgrounds, because things like songs and dancing may attract people who are younger or people who don't like to read.
Heathers the musical teaches us, as composers, that effective storytelling requires an interdisciplinary understanding of the different modes. The monomythic legacy is augmented by implementing and interweaving different modes.